Subscribing to True Potential YouTube channel is quick and easy. Simply go to your YouTube app on your phone, type in True Potential and press the red subscribe option. You'll then be notified as and when new videos are released.
The questions that have come in from our advisors, the first of which was talking about the US election, wanting to understand what our views are, what we've been hearing from our managers, how do we think about that. It's a vast topic. We could probably spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours talking about US politics. But Paul, do you want to kick us off with some brief thoughts there, and others please do chip in as we're going along?
Yeah, sure. I suppose a place where we can always start is just to have a look at the polls, where Biden's ahead, and he's been ahead, for some time. He's 7.1 in the polls, but that will continue to ebb and flow. It has done. If we look at, if it's 7.1 ahead now, he's been as high as 10, as low as 4. We've seen that he's announced Kamala Harris as his running mate, so she's well supported by the African American community. She takes a very tough stance on police reform, so that has helped Biden a little bit in the polls recently. What's key is going to be how the coronavirus evolves. Clearly, the Democrats really gained in February and March as COVID-19 broke out, as the pandemic has improved. Still not great, but it has improved since then. That momentum has been lost. If you look at the polls in terms of who's going to win the House of Representatives and the Senate, well, the Democrats are ahead there. And that's going to be really important in terms of Biden being able to push through his fiscal agenda. But clearly these things are never a done deal, as we found out at the last election. In terms of how it will affect markets, I think it will be, well, markets hate uncertainty, so probably lead to a bit more volatility. If we look at history, look at the US market, well, they typically trade within a range, but clearly there's a number of big factors impacting markets today that can change that. I suppose if Biden does get in, what's he expected to do? Well, he's expected to at some point reverse corporate taxes, so the opposite to what we saw with Trump. Last time utilities were a beneficiary of lower corporate taxes, so you might see the opposite next time. But higher taxes doesn't necessarily mean poor future returns. If we go back to 2013 with Barack Obama, who pushed through tax hikes, the S&P 500 went on to post its best annual gain in 16 years. They're expected to borrow more money to spend, and so you might see infrastructure do well. Biden's also expected to be less confrontational with China, more European friendly, and so that might just help the more cyclical regions such as Europe, the UK, Japan. I think what could be really interesting though is around share buybacks, and what we've seen over the recent years is US companies, and over here in Europe and the UK, but companies doing more, buying back their shares to juice up their earnings per share growth and inflate stock market valuations, rather than using their capital to spend on their own businesses and to grow their businesses. So that's come under quite a bit of criticism from the press, but also the Democratic Party and Biden himself. So if he does get in, it could be quite interesting to see whether companies bring forward their buybacks if they fear that Biden could introduce curbs on purchases. But that would be supportive for markets if we see more share buybacks than it has been. In terms of how we're preparing for it, in terms of growth aligned, well, we prefer not to take positions around political events, certainly something around the election, but if Biden got in, we could potentially tilt towards those more cyclical regions. So that's just my thoughts.
So it's interesting, as you say, there's a couple of months to go to the start of November. I'm sure there'll be many twists and turns over that period, and we'll get more details of what both parties, I suppose, are thinking about from a policy perspective, and how that plays out. But I think the polls, as we know from past experience here in the UK and the last election in the US, can be sending you in one direction, and then the outcome is very different. So I think volatility, as you say, will be something that will probably come with this until we get to November the 8th and see the eventual outcome.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned sort of getting a better handle on policies. I think with the Democrats we will, and that's certainly associated with, the introduction of the reinforcing of the Affordable Care Act. There are, speculation that if Elizabeth Warren is made Treasury Secretary, she may implement this sort of some sort of financial risk fee on the banks, and those are sort of clear policies. And I think, as Paul mentioned, there will be a different attitude towards China. I think it'll be more of an integrationist approach and more inclusive with the international community. And I think certainly that aspect of policy would be welcome from a Biden administration. In terms of getting more details from Republican policies, I'm not sure if I share your confidence, Jeff.
Yeah, we might get it on Twitter, although President Trump does seem to be using Twitter a lot less over the past number of weeks for some reason or other.
Well, I think what's come out of a sort of fairly mixed picture at the moment, and a lot of confusing signals, is the fact that there are always opportunities. And we've got the US, trading at its high for the fifth time in as many days. But within the US market, look below the headline numbers of the provided by the tech companies and the FANGs. There are a lot of very interesting opportunities, and within the UK, we're still sort of 20% down this year, and there are a lot of opportunities there, and that the reason behind that, or the reasons behind the UK's underperformance are many and varied, but one of them is particularly to do with the dividend income and the cancellation of dividends, and what we're seeing from a number of companies that have just recently put out results is that they're reinstating dividends, or if they're not allowed to pay a dividend, or it's not appropriate for them to pay a dividend, they are financially able to pay a dividend. And I think that is certainly an area that investors will be looking at, and it's an opportunity. And as I say, there always are opportunities.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the True Potential YouTube channel. If you have any questions or requests for future videos, let us know in the comments.